Hello and welcome to Skwigly Animation 1-to-1s. I'm Steve Henderson, bringing you an interview with Paloma Baeza, the director of The Three Hares. Coming into the world of animation from an acting background and perhaps best known for her BAFTA award-winning NFTS graduation film Poles Apart and for her contribution to the Netflix trilogy The House, The Three Hares is her latest animated offering, a beautifully crafted short film produced by stalwarts of high-quality 2D animation here in the UK, Lupus Films. The piece has been making its way across the animation festival circuit, captivating audiences with its delicate storytelling and stunning artistry. Narrated by Jessie Buckley, the film is a tender and visually rich exploration of the natural world, a poetic tale exploring the connection between humans, nature, and the ecosystems that we share. With animation direction by Neil Boyle, The Three Hares combines painterly visuals and emotional resonance to create something truly special. We caught up with Paloma to talk about her film and the creative process behind bringing this beautiful story to life. So, Paloma, thank you very much for talking to Skwigly today. We're here to discuss Three Hares, your new short film. I say new, it's been out for a while now, so it's a great opportunity as it's still making its way around the festival circuit to catch up and to find out more about this fantastic short film. How are you?
I'm good. Great to be here. Nice to see you again.
Yes, thanks. It's been a while. I think it was The House last time we spoke. So it's great to be see you making a brand new film and to discuss Three Hares. And it's based on the short story by Hanya Yanagihara. It draws on folktale elements and really gets stuck into that world of nature and ecological warnings and things like that. What drew you to this story? And tell us a little bit more about your own writing and directing process on this film.
Yeah, so it came from via a live action company actually in New York called Archer Grey, and they wanted to make an animated version of this story that Hanya had written. She'd written it because she'd been inspired by a real life symbol of the Triskelly of these three hares interlocking their ears, which features in the film. And she sort of imagined an origin story for the symbol, which I think there's lots of view historically. This is a symbol that goes back hundreds of years in many different cultures across the world. It's one of those very sort of mysterious, real world symbols that represent the sort of imagination of humanity, I think, and storytelling. So she had taken the symbol and written a kind of folktale that she invented about the three hares. And Archer Grey came to me and said, how could we make this into an animated short? So I really approach things from the point of view of always the subject dictates the medium, particularly, any filmmaking. So is it live action? Is it animation? Then is it animation? Then what form of animation should it take? And not everything suits stop motion and not everything suits. So I think, so it immediately seemed to me that this was a 2D animation because it needed to be very magical and flexible. And also, I think the folk aspect of it made me think of Japanese art, particularly. And actually, when I spoke to Hanya about it, she had also imagined it that way, just coincidentally. So it felt like that was absolutely the right way to go. I then adapted her story to what we have now, a script, and then went about finding the right animation partner with Archer Grey, and that was Lupus Films, 2D animate. I have been working with them on another project, and it was the sort of perfect coming together of a small team, and my first I dabbled a little bit in 2D on development with Lupus and a Frida Kahlo film, but it's the first time I've produced from beginning to end and directed a 2D animation. So that's been really incredible, actually, really amazing process. I loved it.
Could you tell us a little bit about the kind of the themes and being drawn to those themes? Because obviously, chapter 3 of The House, very similar themes of kind of the environmental awareness and our place as humans in the world, and the effect that we have on nature, and how we need to sort of maintain this balance. Is that something that you're naturally drawn to? Is that something that strikes a chord with yourself?
Clearly, it must be, because I've come from, you look back at your work at different times in your life, and when my first animated project really that anybody saw was Poles Apart, and that was had a very strong environmental theme. The house, I felt very strongly, I was drawn to. I feel very passionate about, we're in a crisis. We are in an environmental crisis, and anything that I can do to, I'm not with a group that's actively going out and trying to prevent this. I can only do things in my own way. And what can I contribute? And I think I'm just naturally drawn to character stories. But if I can actually have a layer that underpins something in a universal message that it has some kind of greater good, then all the better, as it were. And this, so yes, this was always an environmental film about humanity and how we're impacting the natural world. So for me, it just felt like a very natural fit. Yeah, and what Hanya imagined was that these three hares were here to warn us about how we are. It begins with a sort of symbiosis of how we've come out of almost, it's a magical tale, but almost out of the sun and the moon, and everything has come out of the natural world, including us. But actually now we're essentially turning against the natural world, but by our actions. So it's about awareness in the end. And I think any way that we can make ourselves aware, it's very difficult, isn't it? It's very difficult for humans to imagine the harm that we're doing. And it's only with evidence in front of us that and sometimes that's too late. So yeah, I do feel very alarmed by our current situation. And it's something that I sort of continue to try and do anything I can about.
If we were to stick you in any wheelhouse, we would probably say stop motion. Given the films, as you mentioned, you're best well known for Poles Apart, your NFTS graduation film, and Chapter 3 of The House, which you did for Netflix a few years back. But here we see you working in 2D, and you said, dictating the content, dictating the medium. Was this exciting for you? Was this terrifying for you? Was this an excuse for you to jump out of a comfort zone, or was there another reason for you diving headfirst into 2D? Was it something that you have always wanted to do?
I have always wanted to work in 2D because I really just love filmmaking, and I think you can apply. And prior to Three Hares, I had been I'd done some work in advertising, and actually all of my advertising stuff has been CG. So I've now sort of covered all the bases, and what I discovered, which I always felt, is that they're all the same skills. I came from live action. I came from, I started out acting. It's like and it's all storytelling. It doesn't faze me because I love it. So and I mean, that's not enough. You have to be good at your job too. But really all you need to do is learn what your parameters are, and then and how best to tell the story within the medium. And I felt that the medium of 2D really offered us everything we needed. It was so exciting because these are magical hares, so they need to transform. They actually sort of start off as dots of light, and they're not, at their core, they're not really hares. They're sort of energy entities. So how can we best make something that can transform within a few frames? And that's hand drawing, really, for me. And I had worked with Neil Boyle before, who was our animation director on this project. But I've worked with Neil a couple of times. Funnily enough, on a project that never got made. It was a hybrid movie that I worked with Sony in the end, and it was a live action with stop motion hybrid. But we got as far. We made the whole movie in animatic form, and did lots of that. We did animation tests and so on, and Neil. That's where I first met Neil. Was actually he was drawing for the animatic. Neil's an amazing director in his own right. So, but we work very well together. We both really love film, and I suppose the process of certainly of animatics is that you have to really think through the shots and where the camera is and so on. And so we both are passionate about sort of quite visionary filmmaking, and so we work. It's a very natural, organic process working with Neil, and I knew that he was so excited about being able to work together again, and so we plotted out the whole animatic together. But also Neil is a brilliant animator, so that's the key thing, is that you're not just imagining the camera, you're imagining the transformations, because it's a film that's full of constantly moving characters and transformations. So it almost becomes part of the fabric of the film. How you're getting from one shot to another involves transformation. So, yeah, I mean, just hugely exciting and different in terms of what one can achieve, because stop motion gives you something different, but you have your puppets, and that's essentially where you're putting a lot of your energies into creating that character. And how expressive that can be, but you have a lot more freedom in drawn animation, and you can do things a lot more sketchy, which I quite like. So the approach was always sort of how loose we can make it, loosely painterly, and with an eye on budget, what can we get in terms of something visually very different and exciting, but also that's not too detailed. So it's being a bit clever about what you've got and how you can use it.
There's a wonderful economy to that as well at the beginning, where you cover billions of years of natural history by saying which of the hares belong to which groups. And there's this beautiful metamorphic animation where they're describing the land, the air, the sea, and they turn from insects into dinosaurs, and they just really fluidly move through that process, which is, fantastically kind of realized and put forward. I wonder how much of a kind of different type of hands-on process it was working in 2D as it is working on something like The House or Poles Apart. Have you found yourself, is it obviously a completely different director's chair to sitting, but what type of process is it as a director?
Yeah, it is. It's different, and yet, so I actually remember the sequence that for example, which is the key moment really in the whole story, is how are you going to get across this strange, unique thing where you're describing out of the sun and the moon comes these lights, and everything comes from, and these three hares represent. It's quite a lot. I think the film actually is quite dense, since I think it's 5 minutes altogether, but it feels like you've packed a lot in. And I actually remember, this will give you a good example of the collaborative process, is that I remember thinking, this is the sort of, how do we get into the story and how do we communicate this? Because then we can enjoy the story if we understand who these three hares represent, which is essentially, earth, air, the elements, and water. And I think I was like on a plane, and I often sketch on an iPad. I don't draw very well. I can draw enough that I can communicate my ideas, but I'm very bad at drawing. But I'm quite clear on communication, so I can tell you the camera needs to be here, or I can give you some arrows, or I can draw the sketch and say this. And that's where Neil comes in, and he knows exactly what I mean, and then he can do a better version, and then we can pass that on to the artist. So it's a sort of a sort of relay race of collaboration. But I absolutely knew that if we were starting with this sun and the moon sequence, that then what would be lovely is if you were coming down into water. I'd written it too, but the sort of visualizing it, I might have even swapped things around. I might have had air first. I can't remember. But the dropping down gave you a downward motion. I knew that, and then that would get you into the next elements. And so that breaks it down into you're sort of in blackness. Then you can deal with light. Then you can deal with water, and then from water you can go to air. So you've got these very sort of clear, and then you go to earth. So this is what we needed to establish. And I had these terrible sort of drawings on an iPad, but that's what I began with Neil. And it's clear. It's, even though it's bad drawing, it's clear. So that's the key. I think we were discussing about, what directing is. And in a sense, that's what it is. It's communicating your ideas and then working with the skill sets of brilliant people that I can't draw like they can. I can't paint like they can. I can't hold a camera like it. I can't light things in the way that's why we have different skill sets. And then it's about unifying that workforce together so that we're all creating the best possible film. So that just sort of fed through at every stage, I think. So I knew exactly the kind of vibe, or I had lots of references for visual references and mood boards for the texture. We wanted a kind of texture for those hairs and the world, but it wanted it to be unique for a human, creating a human that's actually an every human. So not too female, not too male, not too alien. It's sort of, what does that look like? So those designs. So I'm very involved at every stage, and then we together find it.
And I think as well, there's such an epic amount that goes on in this film, and yet you mentioned it yourself. It fits nicely within, I think it's 4 minutes and 50 seconds, which is to be applauded, because there's a shift in trend now towards longer short films. And obviously, as a festival director and programmer, it leads to some very heartbreaking decisions, because these big films are an immense struggle to program. But this film fits perfectly within its runtime, and that it meets a fine balance. Is this something you were conscious of when making the film? Is this something where you could really quite easily, budget pertaining, been allowed to go right the way up to 30 minutes with this? Or did you look at the story, look at what you had, and think, this is it, this is a 5-minute? How did this conversation take place at all? I'm fascinated.
It absolutely did. I have to say, initially, it was budget related initially. Not that I always think I don't like loose, baggy things. I like tight storytelling. So I do like that. But this was, there was a lot to pack in. I think but to be perfectly honest, the initial draft I did of the script, it came in at like 10 pages. So that was, and then it was a very low budget. So we were never going to achieve 10 pages. That's, essentially 10 minutes. You can kind of say a minute a page. And so, so I whittled it down and down and down over some time. How can we condense it down? What, how short can we make it? Because the shorter we make it, the less animation. But actually, I think that was to its credit in the end, and it's a good exercise to be rigorous. How much do you? I think we ended up with the right thing in the end. But if we'd had all the money in the world, maybe it would have been 10 minutes and then maybe too long. I think we've got something that's very impactful because of its length. So it's a bit of it wasn't necessarily intended to be the length it is. In fact, to be honest, I think I got it down to under 5 pages, but it extends beyond that because, and I knew it would be longer because you get quite a few things for free. Like I can always sort of make that a calculation as you go, and you go, well, that's not really animation. You can hold that for longer and boil it, and it's not so, you get some free stuff in there which extends it and allows it to breathe.
One of the best things about the film, which glues it all together, is the narration from Jessie Buckley, who's just a fantastic narrator. She's such a warm voice, and that fits the medium and the style perfectly. How did that come about? Was there a long audition process, or did you find yourself watching something with her in, and a light bulb popped on in your head? How did Jessie land the gig?
Yeah, well, we were having, the narrator was this but yes, that's the only voice. It's the first time I've never done dialogue. Don't think I've ever done just a narrated piece. So the voice is so crucial. It sets the whole mood. And for me, the voice is that it can completely shift. So anyone else was, no, I know it's obvious, but it's very particular. It's part of the texture of the film. And I knew it had to be a woman. I just sort of felt that was right. And because you're talking about mother, the moon is the mother. And then it was about warmth and a sort of telling a story and drawing you in, and who could do that. I did think about people I'd worked with before, because also you want to sort of reach out to people but then actually sometimes you want to maybe mix things up a bit. And how did Jessie come about? I think it was I'd been watching her in something that was around that period, and I thought what she has is this. It just embodies the tone of what we were doing. I think particularly there's that sort of, it feels quite timeless what she does. And additionally, she had this as a sort of almost as a coincident, something that really blended with what we were trying to do was rhythm. It has a rhythm, the film, because also music, I should say, music was also, it was voice and music, and Gustavo Santaolalla, who is sort of a legend and I'd worked with on The House. So I knew that it had to sort of fit these two rhythmic textures, as it were, with anyway, the additional thing about Jessie is that she understands music. She's a singer, and when she came in, so we just tried our luck, and she said yes. I think always to anyone I would say, if you're thinking about it, should I, shouldn't I, try your luck, because they can only say no. And she said yes. But when she came in, she absolutely watched it through with my terrible so what do you call it? Temp voice on it. I said, just excuse her, because we had to have something in there for the animatic. And she approached it like, she says, I think it's like, it feels like a piece of music. So it felt very natural that she would, and we did it several times all the way through instead of doing it in pieces, so that she could feel the rhythm of the whole thing. Yeah, that was a godsend, really. Yeah.
Maybe that goes back to my previous question about the length, because obviously it's a sort of the length of a song in many ways. So it fits that way. So
yeah.
Wow, fantastic. I have to ask you about working with the wonderful Lupus Films as well. Obviously, coming on board and finding a partnership, we've already discussed that, but this is a partnership that's hopefully due to continue, isn't it, with working on a feature film based on the life of Frida Kahlo. What drew you to the life of Frida Kahlo as a subject for a feature film? Can you tell us more about that process?
Well, this has been going on a while. It's Lupus had the idea initially. So this goes back a few years, and Lupus brought me in. I don't think I'd met Camilla before, but she brought me in because she wanted to try and make a film about Frida, but there was no script, there was no sort of approach. She just knew, and I'm Mexican, and I'm a woman, and so Frida has always been important to me. Like I've still got, in fact, my laptop is sitting on the diary of Frida that I have had since I was a teenager, the sort of, the published diary, which is in Spanish, my version. So it was one of those strange sort of, again, coming together of this makes total sense. And so we started working together. I found an approach. We worked with the BFI, and they paid me to write the screenplay. So we've had the screenplay, and now we're essentially in the process of trying to raise the money. And Lupus have been very amazing. We've done some tests, but that would be 2D, but perhaps some mixed media in terms of the backgrounds, but essentially 2D. And it feels like, again, this is I really hope it happens. I mean, with these things, it's very hard. It's adult animation. It's very hard to get things off the ground, but I think we've got something very special because it's about the interior life of Frida, really. I think films have been made about Frida, documentaries, and there's the live action version, and they're more of a sort of straightforward biopic. But what we're trying to do is work with animation to capture the inner life of the artist, and also then visualize some of that in a sort of fantastical sense. So you're in and out of reality over a period of 2 years, when she left Mexico, went to New York and Paris on her own, in her own right. So she had her first solo exhibition, and so it's Frida often gets tied in with Diego Rivera, and this is a period where she is mainly on her own, with her art and her lovers, and experiencing different parts of the world. So it's been very well received in terms of people that have seen it, and would like to be involved. So I guess just watch this space if we can raise the full budget and try and make it. Yeah.
I think Lupus had a great track record in making these films that need to exist as well, and they have a good track record of finding, fantastic UK-based directors as well, and making their features. Obviously, last year we had The Night Before Christmas in Wonderland, and they're really having huge success with short films, but also Kensuke's Kingdom, co-directed by Neil Boyle, with Kirk Hendry.
Wonderful Neil. By the wonderful Neil Boyle.
The wonderful Neil Boyle, yes, and obviously the late great Roger Mainwood with Ethel and Ernest, one of my personal favourites as well. So fingers well and truly crossed for that particular one as well. And I do remember Frida Kahlo turning up in Joseph a few years ago, which was an animated feature film. Just as a cameo, and I remember thinking, obviously, I'm enjoying the story of Joseph, but I just want to see more of Frida. She's such an enigmatic and amazing character and personality, and she did everything she did in this time period. Really has cemented her legend as this fantastic figure. Influential figure, and I would just love to see more of it. So I wish you all the very best of luck with that. And I've got my fingers crossed that Camilla and Ruth can stay out there and raise the funds, and we'll see Frida on the big screen sometime soon.
Yes, I hope so.
Can you tell us a little bit more about coming into the world of animation? Because obviously you spent the majority of your early career in front of the camera, and people may well know you from those TV shows and films. Before now, it seems you're comfortable with the world of animation. Dare I say? Is this?
Yeah, I know, it's nice. It's really nice. I know you come in and you feel like a little bit of a, I think we all feel like frauds kind of at different times. And or you feel like, oh, I don't know enough, or I know lots of, I went back to NFTS to do animation, having had this career in, well, I directed some live action shorts. So I felt comfortable in terms of, as we discussed, storytelling, because I do think it's all storytelling, even acting is storytelling. But animation, I'd never made an animatic, or I had to learn the sort of nuts and bolts of it, and it is a really terrific place to learn it. My goodness. So I was very fortunate. I felt very fortunate. It was hard work, but then you think, well, is anyone going to employ me again in anime? Or you feel like I don't belong because I didn't come from a graphic background or something or other. But I think we all bring different things. And so I think actually the skill set that I bring, I've come to learn, has its own benefits. And now that I feel comfortable with the nuts and bolts and the techniques and what you need to consider, I felt like I really found my home in animation, because it blends everything that I'd learned up to that point. And it doesn't mean that I can't move back and forth between either straight live action animation, or what I love a hybrid approach. I'm quite flexible now as a filmmaker. So yes, comfortable is the right word. I just feel like now you can just throw anything at me and let's just see what it needs, what the story needs. So and in terms of the sort of in front of the camera skill set with animation, it's particularly useful. Neil often talks about it being useful without me even realizing. I think he sometimes watches me if I'm trying to express what the character needs to do, what the scene needs to do, and he'll often be thinking about how I'm expressing it, because I'll sort of be performing it in a not a huge, but to me, I think we all do a bit of that. But it's quite useful in terms of communicating natural gesture or what the heart of the thing is, and making something that's that you believe in, that you identify with as a viewer. That's always on my mind. So you've got that, and then you've got the overall sort of scene and how it looks and how it feels, so your eye on the other things, but the character and the performance is particular to me in terms of my background, probably. So we're doing another Frida test at the moment, and I in this room I'll set up a camera and do a whole. I'll act out the whole thing so that the animator has something real to look at, in terms of, because I think then you find, this is not uncommon, of course everyone does this, but it's really important, because you find these very natural movement and gestures that you might not have thought of if you're just coming up with it on your own. So it's a useful tool to have in the belt when anybody needs a temp voice or a bit of a reference footage. It's quite handy. Yeah.
And obviously, I think Aardman call it live action video, as a way of kind of communicating, as directors use it to communicate to their animators exactly what they want. And you must have heard animators or animation directors being actors with pencils, or acting with pencils, kind of. I think you've kind of expressed that perfectly there.
Yeah, it's true.
And I wonder, this is maybe a little bit more of a kind of a bit more of a personal question, but when you do find yourself at a place like an award ceremony or somewhere like that, where you find yourself surrounded by, perhaps you'll find animation colleagues, but you'll find colleagues from the world of acting as well. Do you have to be a chameleon? Do you have to change your your approach to that? Do you feel, or do you just feel like the storyteller, as opposed to having to become an actor or having to become an animating director? How do you cope?
I feel very comfortable now. I think actually it really culminated, that feeling really culminated in when the house was the only the only animation to be nominated for a single drama at the BAFTA. So we went to the TV BAFTAs, and we were the only animation in the room. And it's all, and that for me says everything about how I feel about the world and the process that our filmmaking world, as it were, where animation is not a genre. It's just another medium. And so it needs to just be evaluated that way. And that felt like a vindication to me that we were there, and it was completely surreal. And you had the single dramas, they show the clips, and suddenly these puppets talking come up, and people go, "What is that? I don't understand." So yes, I'm sitting there not just with live action colleagues, but also with actors, but also with animators. And that encapsulates exactly what makes me happy. We're all part of the same world. We're all telling stories, and we all just come together with our different skills to do it. So no, it doesn't. It's completely fluid, and that's what makes me really happy.
Fantastic. Well, Paloma Baeza, thank you very much for speaking to Skwigly today about Three Hares. I think we've gone really deep there into the world of directing and everything else. So thanks so much for sharing your experiences and your thoughts on that. It's been fantastic to talk to you today. So thanks very much for speaking to Skwigly, and best of luck with wherever the film ends up next. And yes, I'm looking forward to that Frida Kahlo biopic.
Let's fingers crossed. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us for this Skwigly Animation 1-to-1. You can watch these interviews on our YouTube channel or subscribe to us via your favourite podcast provider. Now, we are a free podcast, but if you'd like to support us, you can do by leaving a nice review and recommending this podcast to a friend. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can financially support the podcast by scrolling down to the bottom of the Skwigly homepage and clicking the supporters link. All the proceeds help the Skwigly team do the work that we do across the site. We're also across social media, and you can find us on all your favourite platforms by searching for us, SKWIGLY. Thanks again for joining us, and don't forget, for all the latest news, reviews, interviews, and anything else you could possibly want from the world of animation, head over to skwigly.com.